My name is Jamie Woods. I'll be your instructor for EC314, Public and Private Investment Analysis, during the winter of 2016. This is an online version of the course, so this is the most effective way to give you the details on the syllabus as well as giving you the piece of paper that's there. Let's first start with the course description that we have. This is officially what's out in the book. This first paragraph that's right here, basically it says things about that you're going to learn baby finance. So you're going to learn some things about accounting that you really didn't necessarily want to know, how to make some investment choices with some really basic criteria, and in the end, get around to making some cash flow forecasts, which are readable by other people. The real reason the course is here, though, is to make sure that the engineers in the room satisfy some of their requirements for their majors, which requires them to have an engineering economics course. And also, it's a legal requirement in Oregon that students for many of the engineering fields, computer is one of the exceptions, take an engineering economics course. The reason why it's of interest to other students is it's part of one of the clusters. Economists frequently take this class because they find in a working environment, these are some of the things that people think they know that they don't necessarily know. The reason I'm teaching the course is because I come from a consulting background. And so I'm used to having the things in this course be jobs which are passed around between engineers, economists, and MBA types, depending upon who has budget available and those kinds of things. The outline is essentially constructed from a lot of the mistakes that I made on the job. A lot of times when I expected engineers to know things and they didn't. So it's constructed from real world experience, things that you are definitely going to know. And that's why we're trying to get this perfect and refined for you to use. This is a fully online course. This is not my favorite way of teaching the course. For some reason, students take online courses and they think they're going to be way easier and take way less time than their regular in-person courses. They're kind of thinking about them as the credit recovery courses they may have had in high school. This is not true. This class will take a bit more effort than your regular in-class courses. It takes a lot more discipline. In a regular course, which will meet 4 hours a week, I expect my students to put in 3 hours outside of class for every one in. And that was kind of standard way back in the day when I started college. So if you do the math, you're going to be spending a couple of days on this class every single week. So expect that kind of workload. The absolute worst decision that students make is to procrastinate. And so I've seen students attempt to do 3 weeks worth of work in 3 hours in this class, and it doesn't work out very well. That said, it is fully online, so make sure you have things like an internet connection, a webcam, a microphone, so you can at least get at me during the online office hours. This class will also have, and this is an extremely important, a final exam, which is in person on March 18th at 8 a.m. The final is absolutely required. There's no getting around it, and I will only give it at that particular time. Please don't, call or email asking for an earlier final exam or anything like that. It's just that I don't have the time to put together a whole new final exam just for you. It takes me approximately a day to put a final exam, and so you're asking me to add in that much extra time for your convenience. So if you can't make that time for the final exam, please drop the class right now. If you're going to be taking the final exam at the testing center, make sure you set it up to start at 8 a.m. on the 18th. And furthermore, make sure that you notify me that you've done so by February 8th. If I don't receive any notice by February 8th, I will assume that you will be taking the exam in the main exam room with everybody else. Part of the reason why we do this is the testing center gets a little crowded around that time. And so I have students waiting until the absolute last minute to schedule these. They can't schedule them at the correct time, forcing me to, try to make a new final exam for them on the fly. Usually they end up with an incomplete and something far less desirable than they wanted for their testing environment. So remember, in-person final exam on March 18th. Make sure you have it on your calendars. It is absolutely required. So moving on to less alarming things, there are technically no prerequisites for the course. You are expected to have a reasonable math background. This is just high school algebra that we have here. This Math 95 is kind of a practical requirement. What I'm looking for is the ability to handle simple algebraic manipulation, how to handle powers, and that kind of stuff. I found that students who do very poorly in the course, besides the procrastinating types, are those that are really lacking in the math background. This is typically not the engineers, but it is other students that have this problem. You'll find up on D2L a simple kind of math pretest. It's actually an old Math 95, Math 111 pretest. And if you take a look at that and you remember being able to do about half the questions or can do half the questions, you'll do just fine in the class. It's those who look at it as if it is some kind of advanced math that will have a lot of difficulties in this course. So let's move around to some contact information here. The contact information may seem a little complex and convoluted, but it's just a way that I've figured out how to adapt to having really large classes. Altogether, this class should have about 160 students or so in there. And if people start using email the way that they usually do, I'll receive just a rain of emails every single morning, which I will go ahead and then try to respond to. I've done that in the past, and what I found out is that when one person emailed me, it's typically about 12 people with about the same issue. And so the easiest way to handle those common things is to say, look, if you got a question that is not something that's incredibly personal, like, geez, I'm in the hospital this week, how can you help me out? Or something along those lines, post whatever questions you have up in this forum that I've created for you. And there's a link right here in the forum. The forum is called Piazza. It is organized so there's folders for all sorts of topics and so on down the line. If you end up emailing me a question that actually should be on Piazza, I'll just send you a form email that says post around up there. I chose Piazza rather than D2L just because I needed to have some kind of communication method which was independent of the school's login. So we've had a few too many, I call them D2L apocalypses, where D2L goes down or the sign-in mechanism goes down. And this allows me to communicate outside that should something happen. We've never really had Piazza go down, so it's a reliable communication channel for us. Let's go ahead and head down here. If, again, you send me an email, which should be on Piazza, I just send you a blanket one there. And if you've got questions that really don't work on Piazza, I've got a whole bunch of different ways for you to communicate with me. The first couple are instant messenger, text message type things, and these work really, really, really well. I do respond quickly, and these are often preferable to me just because when I answer emails, I am incredibly terse. I'm so terse to the point that people think I'm pissed all the time. I'm not. I'm just brief. Also, with instant messenger, we can go back and forth a little bit because oftentimes when students ask questions, I need to ask questions to figure out where they really are because I find that they're frequently asking the exact wrong question in order to get at what the solution is. So if you log into your student email account, you'll see an instant messenger function over on the left. You can use that. That's the woodsj@pdx.edu. If you're just working generally, that is a phone number which will get to me for text message or just plain calling. Either one will work. If I'm not busy, I'll respond. And it may sometimes take a couple of hours if you message me and I don't get around to it. And that's just because, the schedule can be kind of packed. I tend not to respond to text messages and IMs after I stop working for the day for a variety of reasons. Usually that's about 6 o'clock. If you do message me after 6, say if you decide you want to work on questions at 1 a.m., which a bunch of students do, I will go ahead and respond to you when I wake up in the morning. So I wake up in the morning at an insanely early time. I'm like a 4:30 early riser. So I respond then. So if you IM me when I'm sleeping, I'm likely to IM when you're sleeping. So please be aware for this when you're instant messaging off kind of working hours that are there. Email is posted around right here. So it's woodsj@pdx.edu. And I really do mean it when I say that I only respond on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I've found that this is just the easiest way of handling email. I batch it up and take care of it on those particular days. So if you got something which is reasonably urgent, email is not necessarily the way to get to me. D2L also has a mail function, and I don't use it at all. So if you send me something in D2L mail, I just won't receive it. I won't respond to it. It'll go into a black hole. It's the fastest way of not getting a hold of me. I do have regular physical office hours. I realize this is an online course, but if you want to come and visit, I'm in Kramer Hall 241O. So it's on the second floor of Kramer Hall. Econ Pod, I'm over on the right-hand side. I'll be on the left-hand side of that hallway. I got a window, 3 plants, and a standing desk. Please come by to visit if you actually want to talk. I'll hold regular drop-in, walk-in office hours on Monday from noon to 1. Last week of class, but not including final exam week. Final exam weeks gets extremely hectic dealing with odd student requests, and so I kind of clear that time out otherwise. Because you are online students, when you look on D2L, there'll be a link that gets you to a Hangout, which again comes with your PSU email account. And I've got a webcam up in my office, and I'll just turn it on at the start of office hours, and you may see me working at the computer or a picture of a whiteboard. But if you want to join office hours via webcam rather than walking on in, that works great for you. That'll work great too. Also, I realize that the office hours are restrictive. There's not all that many. And the reason for that is that I've noticed that PSU students don't actually ever come to office hours, but they really want to meet with you. So what I've done is created a appointment scheduling mechanism. And so you'll find this link right here, which is this You Can Book Me thing. I make a bunch of 15-minute time slots available each week. There are at least 4 hours worth every single week. And they kind of fill up sometimes at the end of the term. They can get crowded sometimes. But I'll fill them in during regular working hours. And so I won't be holding online office hours after 5, sometimes 6, depending upon when I'm downtown. But you should be able to get a hold of me pretty much no matter what. So again, just to review, you can text or IM me just about any time. Just remember that if you text me after 6, I'll tend to respond to you at 5 in the morning. Email is usually only for extremely critical things. Maybe you're in an accident or something along those lines and we need to work out some details. But for the most part, things should go on Piazza. Office hours will be both in-person and virtual because there'll be a link there, and you can schedule appointments. So hopefully I'm setting a standard for faculty accessibility, and hopefully this will work. There are 2 graduate students associated with the class, and their primary responsibilities are going to be doing some grading of the D2L things, but they'll also be there to help you out in the econ computer lab. So the 2 are Maggie Lahit and Emma Willingham. It'll be their first time with the class, so I'll be guiding them through the process. Their email addresses are there, and you will find both of them in Kramer Hall 230. They will be holding regular weekly office hours, but we don't know what that will be until the first or second week, and I'll update the syllabus as we find those things out. Moving along to textbooks and other resources. If you've gone to the bookstore and tried to check out what the textbook was, you probably found this Contemporary Engineering Economics 4th edition there. They may or may not have it. You may have looked online and saw a terrible price, like $160 or something along those lines. Don't get it. I am infuriated by textbook prices, and so I am definitely going out of my way to make it so that it is less expensive as possible for you. Most of the books, which are engineering economics textbooks, have just about the same thing in them. And as far as I'm concerned, they are absolutely exchangeable. You can get just about any book that says engineering economics on the front, and it'll work out just fine. A few topics here and there may be missing. It's no big deal. So if you want to, you can go to the library. I can't remember what the call letters are on it. But there's a shelf there, and you can see quite a few of these old engineering economics texts. Pick one that works for you. I tend to like textbooks that don't have a lot of color. They have lots of math. They have easy to read fonts. Some people like to have lots of examples. Some like textbooks with many short words. Some like them with just a couple of really long words. So pick one that works for you. If you have any kind of questions on whether it'll work with the class, I have a link here that has the table of contents for the fourth edition of Park. And you can see how the table of contents match up. And it allows you to make a correspondence between what I tell you the reading is going to be and what you should be doing in whatever book that you grab. Many students find that the textbook is not exactly necessary, given that we've got a giant wiki that's associated with the course. But some people really do prefer to have a second source and have a textbook. It is listed as being required simply because there are some students that have their textbook paid for by a third party, and they will not pay for textbooks if they are listed as optional. So it is there for those people. There is another text which I have fully listed as supplementary, which is the Shams Outline of Engineering Economics. It's part of the Shams series. You can usually pick them up for about $12. I have a few in my office, and some people do find it useful if they're having trouble a little bit later on in the course with time value of money calculations. Okay, but beyond the textbooks, we're going to have a bunch of online resources. D2L is clearly going to be a thing there. This is where you'll take care of quizzes and things like that. There is a fairly large wiki for the course, and by fairly large, I mean there's well over 200 pages in the wiki. I think we're pushing 300 at this point. It's not just words, it's also podcasts, screencasts, an amazing number of YouTube videos. Most of them I made, so they're really bad production quality. You will hear dryers in the background, dogs howling, all sorts of crazy things like that. But it's just me trying to get the information to you in some way. The videos are, for the most part, small 10-minute chunks on a single topic. So you don't, I've got a short attention span, so I know that you guys have short attention spans too. So it's made to fit in with our short attention spans. And then going back again, there's Piazza, which is our forum mechanism that's there. Anyway, on to about D2L. This is where we'll be doing all the quizzes, which there are going to be a lot. Several are going to be due every single week. This is not the kind of online course that you'll be able to, put off, not doing work for 3 weeks or something along those lines. If you're having a technical problem with D2L or your computer, take care of it yourself or handle it through Campus Help. This is an online class, and for some reason, I do not know why, they are charging you extra money for some kind of computer assistance. Because they are, if you got any kind of problems, call them up, make them fix the problem for you. If D2L is giving you a 500 error or something along those lines, call them up, ask, why am I getting a 500 error? Make them work for the money that they made you pay. So please, if you got any problems with D2L, call them up. You're responsible for handling that kind of stuff. Now, once we get to D2L, and there'll be a separate video on tools, you'll have some important links. There's a link there on how to get to the wiki. There's a link there on scheduling an appointment. There's the office hours link that I told you about. There is going to be on the left-hand side a calendar of all the due dates. Please note, I have already created all the quizzes, or at least I will by the time the class starts. They're all listed on there. They're all complete. They all have due dates that are on there, and you'll find everything there. I have played around with when quizzes are going to be due throughout my career here at PSU. I've found that I've been attempting to make it so students don't procrastinate as badly as I've seen them do in the past. The last weird experiment I tried is I had all quizzes due at 3 a.m. on Monday morning, which is, I thought that was the most uncomfortable time that I could come up with for students to try to ride a deadline. But 20% of the class still was attempting to do the quizzes at the very last moment. So instead of trying to manipulate students into not procrastinating, I'm just setting it with a kind of common business deadline. So all quizzes will be due by 5 p.m. on Wednesday. So if there are any variations in there, it is a mistake. That's when things are due. Please remember that you'll be able to do things ahead of time. You don't have to do them in the 2 hours before they're due. You can do them ahead of time. It works. It's not a problem. Next chunk we have right here, table of contents for the 4th edition that I already told you about will be up there too. If you look on D2L and check the upper left-hand corner, you'll see something which says course content. And the class is arranged in a whole bunch of modules. It roughly works out to be about 1 per week, but not quite. Sometimes we'll hit 2. Sometimes a module will stretch out over 2 weeks. And each module will have at least 4 parts. First, there'll be a section which is preparation. And the preparation is going to be pages out of the book you're supposed to read. So I'll say read 3.1 through 3.3 and so on down the line. And also a bunch of wiki links that you should watch and read in order to get prepared for the material. The wiki stuff is required. And students have taken the class in the past, basically say, read everything first, then do the quizzes. Don't start the quizzes and hope you can catch up. That other technique doesn't really work. So you really do have to do these things ahead of time. There are also for each module a practice assignment. So these are set up so that they're auto-graded. You can take them as many times as you want. The keys show up. There's hints. And each one of the questions is linked to a page in the wiki, some of which have worked answers, some don't. If you feel like putting the worked answers in, kind of go for it. Everything will work out just fine. And then I divide the quizzes that count into 2 sections. There are pre-quizzes, which do count for your grade. You can take them up to 2 times. You don't have to take them twice. So if you get a perfect score on the first shot, don't do it again. You do get the highest score out of your 2 attempts that's there. Each time you take them, they're likely to be a little bit different. So there'll be randomly generated questions, different parameters that'll be there. Also, slightly different questions drawn from a pool. You'll be told which ones you got right, which ones you got wrong, but you won't be told what the answers are in between. So those will be revealed after the due date that's there. There's also a second quiz, which I refer to as these post quizzes. They're worth more than the pre-quizzes. They're worth 2 pre-quizzes that are there. And these tend to be long answer open response things. So this is where you show calculations, you give examples, you create kind of big spreadsheets, stuff like that. These are not auto-graded because we don't have a parser that works like that in D2L. So these will be hand-graded. So you won't know exactly what your score is until a couple of days later. And we'll set the deadlines for when we'll have those graded later on in the course once I know what Emma and Maggie's schedules look like. The online quizzes, the pre's and the posts, are timed. I've given you 120 minutes to do each one of the quizzes, but it usually takes about 45. If you find that you're taking these quizzes and you are quote unquote completing them in 15 minutes, you're probably getting low scores because the questions are not, what is the definition of, or very simple things like that. They can take a little bit of time, but not the full 120 minutes. Whatever you do, this is D2L. So the minute you start something, the clock starts. And just because you close the window doesn't mean the clock stops. So after 120 minutes, these will auto-submit and you'll end up with a 0. So please watch out for that. I also recommend that when you're doing these quizzes that you treat it as a testing situation where you're in full control of your environment. So if you need to have, cool jazz going in the background in order to be comfortable, if you need to have a shot of whiskey in order to be comfortable, go for it. create the kind of testing situation and the testing time which will maximize your score in the end. So don't stress yourself out by creating a bad testing environment when you do these things. Again, D2L will have, every single one of these will be calendared. These are hard deadlines. And, I realize that, D2L does on occasion go down. That's why I call them D2L apocalypses. But just because, they're down, for 2 hours on Wednesday before the due date will not change the due date. You could have just done it ahead of time and everything should have worked out just fine. So disruptions in D2L, not a problem for me. They could be a problem for you. If the interruption takes place in the middle of your assignment and kind of screws things up that way, I can reset it. But other than that, if you had a scheduling difficulty on this is not necessarily my responsibility. Okay, moving down to the other thing that we have here, which is Piazza. This is the foreign mechanism. It's intended to be independent. If you have questions related to course administration, like how stuff works, put it in the logistics folder and make sure that your subject is informative, something, other than help or something along the lines. So construct a good subject line will work great. Be specific. Don't say things like, I've got a question on that quiz we had last week with the question about the loans. Just put the actual real detailed question in there. I'm frequently responding to these just when I have spare time during the day, and I'm doing it on my phone. So if you make me wait to find out what the details are, you will wait in order to get a response. And it shouldn't be just me that is responding to these questions. Students should be responding to each other too. Another thing that's there is that oftentimes the keys that come out of D2L are just the answer. It's like the answer is A. Why is that? In order to get kind of a deeper key that generalizes, after the due date of any of the D2L questions, just copy the question out of your quiz that you just took, paste it up in the forums, and we'll create something that works as a longer, more involved answer to the question. So just feel free to go ahead and paste full questions up on Piazza after the due date, and we'll answer them for you. This is going to be pretty important because the long answer questions are more in the style of what you'll see on the final exam. And sometimes you are going to need longer explanations in order to get to there. So the long keys are on you to ask the questions so that we can give them to you. And again, the biggie that we have here is the wiki for the class. You'll have it out here. You'll see everything that we're doing in the class on the outline section, which is just the outline page that's there. In order to get access to this, you have to create a wiki.account. account. So that's step one. I'm assuming that you all know how to create an account at some kind of place. And then you have to go to the landing page of the EC314 wiki and ask for permission to get in. So it's a two-stage process. I let everyone into the wiki once a day. Usually it's in the morning. So don't, ask me, try to get access to the wiki just in the hour before you're trying to do your quizzes and then be upset that you didn't have access. Just do it as soon as possible, and I'll let everyone in that day. And I'll just keep on doing that for several weeks to make sure that everyone does eventually have access. The reason why I'm requiring you to have access to the wiki is because it's a wiki, which means if you see something wrong, fix it. It is supposed to be something which is edited by all of us, and it shouldn't be just me going in and fixing things. In fact, if you read through it, you'll see that except for videos and a bunch of the headings, a lot of the text has just been added by students. And you anticipate kind of fixing this and making it work for other students too. That's essentially what this paragraph said. So don't be shy. Go ahead and fix things. If you do something wrong, don't worry about it. I check all the edits that take place periodically, oftentimes once a day. And if something looks weird, I'll go ahead and roll it back or fix it, something along those lines. There are how-to pages if you're not used to editing wikis. There's a sandbox you can play with. It's really not all that hard. You guys can pull it off. Last warning about Wikidot is it is outside of PSU. So the PSU help desk will provide you with no other help. You and I are customers. I don't have any special status. If you got a problem, it's one of those things where you take it up with Wikidot or set it up yourself. Finally, on this section, we've got a little piece about Netiquette, which is just a matter of not being an ass online. That's kind of a long explanation of it. So if you start doing bad things up in the forums, I'll kick you out of the forums. If you know, I think that's about the only place where I have you interacting right there, but the forums will be important to you. If you start making rude comments and edits on the wiki, I'll kick you out of the wiki. And that's generally speaking the way it works. If you do something that though kicks into where I'm supposed to make a code of conduct report, I'll do that too and take care of it one way or the other. So again, this is the long paragraph that says don't be an ass, and most of you know how not to be an ass. Now let's get along to grades, which is a concern of many people. This is an online version of the class, and it is I don't particularly like this form nowadays because I found that when I teach this class online, only 30% of the students that enroll actually finish the class. Most of the people will procrastinate themselves into an awful grade and then have to drop it at the last minute. So this is part of the reason why I don't necessarily like online versions of the class. The other thing is that when people take online classes, they treat it like those old credit recovery classes that they may have had in high school. So they think of it as being much less work than a traditional in-person class. And I can tell you for the online students, their scores on quizzes, their probability of answering a question correctly is much lower than the in-person and hybrid versions of the course. They also spend less time on the material on those pages that I do track. They spend less time doing the quizzes. They just aren't there for the class like others. So in my in-class and hybrid courses, I usually get about 30% A's and 30% B's. Last time I taught this class, it didn't quite work out that way. The performance was just absolutely abysmal. The grade, however, is determined by, God, if that wasn't scary enough, quizzes in D2L, about 80%. And then the other part is going to be an in-person final exam. Again, as I kind of keep saying, the in-person final exam will be in the style of the post questions. I didn't used to give final exams in this class, but the number of students that cheat on online quizzes is just astounding. Last term, and this is fall 2015, I turned in 11 students in 1 week for cheating. And while I'm only able to fail students on the single assignment that I catch them on, the final exam catches the rest because students who are cheating on the quizzes tend to do really bad on the final exams. The in-person final exam is, the way I put it, the only thing that students can't outsource. So the reason why it's there is to make sure that people who are cheating are thoroughly penalized because of it. And I will say that of the students that I did catch cheating, I think almost all of them got Fs, and all of them got Fs in the class based upon their performance on the final exam, which was absolutely abysmal, which is why it's there. All right, now less gloomy. Let's talk about those online quizzes in D2L. I've already told you that there's two types, pre and post. And the way it's supposed to work is that your grade will be the sum of the percent correct on each quiz, pre-quiz, plus twice the sum of the percent correct in each post-quiz. And so this means that any points that you see within a quiz are only comparable within the quiz and not between quizzes. So a quiz that has 20 points is worth the same as a quiz that has 3 points as far as your grade goes. So don't try to add up points and have it work that way. Also, post quizzes are worth twice as much, and those are the ones that are going to be hand graded. I do a slight correction at the end, which is I drop either 2 pre-quizzes or 1 post-quiz, whichever gives you a higher score, just to take into account any kind of technical errors, brain farts, or something like that that may happen to you. Here is a optimal study plan, is what it is. I know that many of you will have a study plan that has things like, and Sunday I will devote to EC314 or something along those lines. Packing everything in one day is not really a good idea. It doesn't give you time in between your attempts. I do intend this to be a class that does require you to work. So what I suggest you do is first just read all the material. I understand this is opposite of what you're used to in some classes, but it is the most effective way of doing it. After you've read the material, try some of the practice quizzes. They're not all that challenging, but they'll give you an idea about what some of the pre-quizzes will look like. Wait a day. Don't go from practice quizzes to taking the pre-quizzes immediately, because you often will have a little bit of false confidence. So wait a day, review some of the material, try some of the practice quizzes again, and then after that, try a pre-quiz. But make sure you put a break of a day in between the pre-quizzes. I see too many students, and it's particularly those that do poorly in the class, take the pre-quiz, and then 10 minutes later, they've started up the next pre-quiz because they just think, oh, there's this one concept that I don't get. It doesn't work that way. Quiz questions have false positives and false negatives too at the same time. You may fully understand a concept and get the question wrong for something goofy, and you may completely misunderstand a question and get it right just by accident. So do put some time in between your two attempts to make sure that your second attempt is very, very, very good. Next thing is put some time in between taking the pre's to do an additional study before you take the post. I think a way to put emphasis on the post is that these post quizzes that you'll take every week are the equivalent of little mini midterms. They are going to take you 45 minutes or more because they are, again, fully written out kind of problems. So do take that time in order to do it. My solution to taking classes was always doing something like schedule a 90-minute block every day to work on this class material, and you're going to find that that's very effective for this course. Trying to pack everything into one day or pack everything into just before the deadline is usually completely ineffective. So moving down to the final exam. Here's some grand warnings about the final exam. It is, for the most part, giving me some assurance that the person who did the work online is the same person who actually registered for the course. So while I can't check IDs while you're doing the work in D2L, I can and will check IDs before you enter the exam room. So you will have to show picture ID when you show up in the room. So everyone will get checked in. Not showing up for the final exam gets you an F. And also to clean up a last little chunk of people right here. If you don't score above the 15th percentile, which means if 100 people show up for the final exam, the bottom 15 people on the final exam will also receive a failing grade. It's just there were a couple key people that I had caught cheating that were just on the borderline, and I want to make sure that they got the grade they deserved, which was an F. It is my experience, since I started doing these things, that this cleans up the cheating problem. Having this in-class final exam where I check IDs, they're not multiple choice questions, they're actually work questions, and the folks that don't actually do their own work reveal themselves at this point and do receive that grade that they deserve, which is an F. And these are just warnings about the final exam, how it's written problems, they're not going to be definitional things. I will give you some items on the final exam, and these things will make no sense to you right now, but there'll be a sheet of accounting ratios, some tables for depreciation, and some formulas for time value of money calculations. You don't have to memorize that, but that's it. There are no additional notes, books, or anything else that are allowed in on the final exam, mostly because I'd have to write a much harder, more difficult exam in order to pull out and see what it is that you do know on those things. Also, you will not be allowed to use phones, smartwatches, or computers or anything like that. So please remember, if you get used to using too many spreadsheet functions, this will be a problem. The phones aren't allowed because I've actually had circumstances where I've walked by someone's phone and saw the answer being texted to them to one of the questions, so those aren't allowed. Smart watches, which are a new thing, can serve the same way, so that's why those aren't allowed. Books aren't allowed. Basically, the calculator that you drag around to all your classes, a writing implement, and a good luck totem are what you'll be walking into the final exam with. So we have a slew of other rules here. One, don't go begging for grades at the end of the term. It's I used to listen too much, but I have had too many people lie to me. So I had a student who claimed that his baby died in the middle of the term. That kind of set him off. He got a bad grade, and that was going to threaten him staying in the country. And so I did the humane thing and set him up with counseling and set him up with the International Student Office. And it turned out there was no baby. He was a U.S. citizen. It was just a bunch of lies. So just don't go for it. My solution to you want a better grade is you have to change your behavior, which usually means changing the way that you study. Here is the rules on what you get to use if you're working on an online quiz. When you're online, you can use your book, you can use the wiki, calculator, spreadsheets, notes, any other resources, provided it is not another student or person. This is one of the things that I busted somebody else for. They were actually having a tutor do their homework for them. I've had other students who have emailed me because the person that they had doing their quizzes for them accidentally left it open and they got a 0 and they wanted to know I could reopen it for them, not realizing that they just turned themselves in. So again, it's as long as it's not another agent, you're going to be A-okay on the online quizzes. This one is supposed to be only in-class stuff, so I guess I'll delete that once I revise the syllabus one more time. This point right here just basically says if you start having problems, come to office hours, make an appointment with me, do something. And do it fast. I usually end up with very desperate students after the drop date when they've kind of locked in their very low grade, expecting some kind of miracle to take place, and also explaining that they really didn't understand the material that was back in week 2, and this is week 9. I can't do anything at that point. I will continue to help, but I often feel like I'm giving CPR to a corpse. So it really doesn't work. So if you start having problems in the class, make an appointment right away. Go to office hours right away. One of those things. This one right here is kind of an extension of the Netiquette statement, but it's the official one for PSU, which basically says, I come after you if you are an ass in any of these particular ways. This chunk right here is about accommodations and D2L. I usually will receive letters about this at the beginning of the term. Since there is no lecture, there are notes. Most of the material will have transcripts already up there. If not, if it's a problem, just go ahead and let me know. And again, about the scheduling of the final exam, you've got a due date on when to schedule it. And if not, you have to handle that problem, not me. This right here is the no cheating thing. And I will turn you in. Again, it was 11 in just 1 week last term that I turned in. I do it quite mechanically. Once I say I have a suspicion, I put together the package. I throw them over to the dean of students and let them take care of it. You will, if I detect you, will receive notice from them. There will be a meeting, there'll be a hearing, there'll be a penalty phase. It takes a lot of your time, one way or another, more than you probably save by cheating. So we have that. So please play with the rules on doing your own work. And this statement right here just says that things are bound to happen. In spite of what all I said before about being a hard ass about deadlines and things like that, in a class this size, someone's close family member is going to be hospitalized or die. Somebody is going to have to go in the hospital. Something serious is going to happen. There will be really huge life-changing events. And we can work with that. So if something huge like that starts to happen, send me an email. We can talk and we'll put together some kind of working agreement that makes it so you can get through the class. And all you got to do is follow through on these things. Make it so that the email that you send me is contemporaneous to the problem. In other words, don't tell me about it during final exam week when it was something that happened in week 2. That's a very bad policy. I'm not real likely to believe what's going on given the number of times that I've had little fibs like that given to me. But we are trying to make it so that you do get through these courses. And it happens at least once a term. There is something drastic that happens in somebody's life, and we make it so it works for them getting through this course. Final bits and pieces here. If you want to see the outline of the course, jump on the wiki. It's there. It's also there in D2L. And here are some of the changes that you'll see in the class if you've had some friends that have taken the course online in the past. So I've changed a few things from the last time I've taught this in winter 2015. The practice quizzes now have a link to the wiki pages. The wiki now has a voting system on all pages, so you can upvote and downvote pages, so we get some idea about what needs improvements, what's working. The comprehensive final exam is not just post-quiz questions anymore. Now I'll just make up new quizzes, questions in order to go there. Pre-quizzes, which used to show just the number you got right, now show the questions that you got right and wrong. I don't think it's so good for actually learning the material, but it is it's what students demanded, so I did go ahead and put that there. I had rigged a method for spacing the pre-quizzes 24 hours apart, the attempts, in order to deal with, kind of imposing a no procrastination effect. It didn't work. I got rid of it. The pre-quizzes are now mostly a lot of randomized questions, so you won't get the same questions every single time. And post-quizzes are almost entirely open response now. They're the kind of things that you'll see on the final exam. Anyway, so that's what the syllabus is like. There'll be a different video for the online tools. I encourage you to take a look at that one too. And if you got any questions, please post them up on Piazza. Thank you.